One thing that the essay did was shift the narrative around DAOs. We could have a conversation for hours about what is a DAO. We intentionally didn't wade into that territory in the essay because it's like a little bit of a murky thing. But once you get to a certain scale, obviously you've gone from multi-sig to a very kind of complex multi-stakeholder system that has very different concerns and maybe manages resources or tries to have different assurances around how it behaves. That's not really addressed in this piece.
Hi everyone, I am Salimi bringing you another episode of NEWFORUM. I'm quite honored to have Sam today, and Sam is lending a hand at Cosmos, previously at Interchain Foundation, and a squad member at Other Internet and beyond. I cannot wait to begin the conversation with you, Sam, and welcome to this episode.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Amazing. So my first question will be, how did you discover Web3 and what has kept you in this space?
Yeah, after college, I moved to New York. I was doing scientific research at a laboratory in New York and living in the East Village. And that was right when Occupy Wall Street was happening. And I was fresh face to New York. It really colored my kind of initial experience there. And I wasn't involved in the day-to-day there, but I did visit Zuccotti and the Occupy kind of had this branching effect on the culture in New York at the time, where it catalyzed public discourse about institutions. I remember being in several reading groups where we were going through texts that were related to institutional reform of some kind. And notably, at the New School, there was a kind of forum that became the platform cooperativism movement. And that kind of fed directly into kind of some of the current conversations around DAOs and Web3 institutions. And I see the Occupy Wall Street and basically Bitcoin is originating in the same place from the financial crisis. And I think you still see both of those strands in a lot of the ideology and thinking and kind of justification for what we're doing. So I had a bunch of friends that were involved in this. I was reading about it, reading and thinking about new institutions, and just got wrapped into a bunch of very early crypto projects, helping them with their publishing their white papers and thinking about the kind of economic design and institutional design. I just had a lot of fun, and I eventually made a move into the industry.
Quite a rich background, and I was looking at your CV and I was like, oh wow, I think looking at your CV intimidated me a bit. I'm like, what am I going to ask him?
Well, that's what CVs are for, right? They're just meant to be intimidating.
You've done quite a bit in this space, so yeah, thank you for being part of the early stages. Also, you wrote on the 29th of December that all year-end industry recaps should be replaced with what did we learn. So what did you learn in 2022?
I feel like I learned the importance of taking a breath. I mean, so when you did your introduction, I mentioned that I had been at the Interchain Foundation for a while. I've just concluded that. I was there for 3 years. Really phenomenal experience. And I saw a whole ecosystem mature in that time, but was really, I don't know, just rushing through it. And I think that there was some things that were missed in our kind of juggling different priorities. And one of the big things was self-care and care for your own team. So that's something that I definitely felt at the end of this year was wanted to spend more time on that and make sure that I was like nourishing, the relationships that with the people that I was spending a lot of time with.
Yeah, that's really important. I guess that kind of falls under mental health and in this space. So aside taking that break, what are some of the active, I'd say, things that you do to maintain your mental health, but at the same time be present in the space? I mean, I love your tweets. Your tweets, I'm not sure if that's like one of those.
I wouldn't say that's good for my mental health, but I really like working with artists, and my parents are both artists. I grew up in an artist household, and kind of art has been a part of my life since forever. I ran an artist magazine for a while, and today I just really like having conversations with artists and talking about their work. And yeah, there's something very refreshing, and I don't know, feels like it transports me in a way that's good for my mental health.
Our community watching you will be super excited to hear that, because we've got a lot of artists and creators. So maybe we could, who knows, we could collaborate or do something with you. I would love to explore that later. So my follow-on question would be, I introduced you as someone at Cosmos. So what does that mean to be lending a hand at Cosmos? And maybe you can also tell us a bit more about Cosmos and the work that you are doing there.
Yeah. So so the Interchain Foundation is linked to the Cosmos ecosystem. It was the kind of originating foundation that was set up at the start of the project. So I am deeply enmeshed in the Cosmos ecosystem. I'm not totally sure where all of your listeners are coming from, but Cosmos is a distinct ecosystem from Ethereum. It has a bit of a different design philosophy. It's a build your own blockchain toolkit. So it lets you create an application specific blockchain for whatever your community's needs are, and then wire them together with a common networking protocol. And lending a hand is just talking to a bunch of teams. I'm still like very much involved in lots of little details in the ecosystem, and I get a lot out of helping people and being a conduit, making sure that there's kind of information shared among different parties.
I guess builders can have this alternative, or developers, because especially when people are onboarding into Web3, all they hear about is Ethereum. And I guess Cosmos is like forgive me, Cosmos, but I think you're like the DAO house of DAOs. So you're the blockchain house of blockchains, kind of.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. Yeah, I imagine these things are all going to get more intertwined over time and more interoperable. So actually in the last year, I've had like many more conversations with folks from the Ethereum community. So I think there's a lot of crosstalk starting to happen, which is really nice.
Definitely really nice. So we're talking about blockchain, and now there's a lot of conversation about culture on chain, right? And that sometimes sounds a little bit odd, but it looks like everything is getting digitized. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on digital identity and technology surrounding that, as well as verifiable credentials.
So digital identity seems like one of the most nascent kind of verticals in crypto right now. And I think that there's a historical reason for that, which is that there's like a cypherpunk origin where personal sovereignty is privileged, and the ability to transact freely, I guess. And describing persons with a unique identity is hard to fit those things together oftentimes. To be honest, I have mixed opinions about many of the identity solutions that are available today. I really think that a kind of strong notion of privacy is like super important. And if we're building systems without that, then we could cause a lot of harm, particularly for disenfranchised people, because they are less capable, have fewer facilities for hiding their identity because there's additional work to do so. So yeah, I think that it's almost good in a way that there's been like a bit of a delay in the identity technology, because there have been like a bunch of advances in cryptographic systems that can really help with this.
I'm curious to know, so yesterday I actually had an episode with an expert in self-sovereign identity, which apparently is a newer term. And we chat a bit about the difference between Web3 and decentralized identity. And I think I was a little bit blown away. Whenever people think about decentralization, they think about Web3. So how can there be like a difference between Web3 and decentralized identity? Is it like the blockchain aspect of it?
I can say one way that I have been thinking about identity on chain recently is, well, there's no notion of strong identity, like of personhood, but what is there? There's typically an account or a UTXO, a unspent transaction output, but we can just talk about accounts for a second. And an account, I mean, obviously a person can make multiple accounts, or multiple people could interact with a single account. So it's really like an actor with a kind of ascribed set of resources. And that actor is undefined, like it could be an institution, it could be an individual. And when you're designing protocols, like that's a kind of helpful model to really think in terms of kind of more abstract, like actors rather than people. And I actually think that this is a good thing in a way, because it allows there to be like a much richer notion of personhood, like off chain. I don't think that we need to capture every single detail. So, I mean, some of these self-sovereign identity solutions are, well, first of all, self-sovereign identity is like separate from a blockchain. You can create a self-sovereign identity just by generating a key pair, basically. And I imagine this person is linking the two. And there are a bunch of kind of projects that are trying to create some connections between them. So they are like distinct from that perspective. And I'm sure your other guest had much more to say about the intersection between those two things.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts. I once had a conversation with Jad Esper, and he was saying that Web3 can exist without the blockchain. Oh, I was asking, can Web3 exist without the blockchain? And then he said, yes, it can. And he explained why. So I think in a way, yeah, it makes sense. And now I want to chat a bit about a paper that you co-wrote with Toby and Laura. And I really enjoyed reading that. I still have a couple of paragraphs to finish. There's a quote that says, an applied research organization, we study and build social technology. As squad vibes grow, so does the possibility of interdependence and resource sharing, social, emotional, financial, trust bought by consistent socialization and self-recognition, and a foundation for exploring what the squad is capable of together. And it says squad culture has only just begun. So maybe you can talk a bit about what is this all about. Maybe give us a quick overview. What is squad culture? And then I will ask you my follow-on question.
Yeah. So it's helpful to say a little bit about the origin of that, of Squad Wealth, the essay. Well, first of all, Toby, Laura, and I have been writing together once a week. We have a 3-hour writing session, and we've been doing that for like 3 years now. And we have an incredibly slow rate of publication. We've only put out like 5 pieces, but it's a very, I think it's like a very necessary practice for all of us. We, it's good to share some life updates and talk to one another. And that piece was written during the pandemic when that weekly call, I think, was like even more necessary for all of us, because it was one of the few kind of ways that we were, in contact with one another. And it was also written during a bear market. So it was like, or I guess at the beginning of the pandemic when it was still bear market. So it was pretty bleak. And we wanted to write something that was feel good. There's a lot of really cool opportunities and things that we're doing together, and really highlight the importance of like the people that you know the best, and like digital spaces that are really the most comfortable to you, which are like group chats and these like private spaces. So we wrote this bombastic essay about the kind of group character of those DMs, and what if you were to supercharge them with like Web3 tools or something. And that was, I mean, we're all working in Web3 and really want to support the social fabric of those small, like intimate groups. And so we thought that there was like a really powerful combination there.
So this essay was written in 2020. And like you said, it was during the COVID and bear market and all that. And so much has changed. And so I guess the part where I read as a quote, I ended the quote saying that squad culture has only just begun, and I'm just curious, would you say, I know like in the essay, you touched a little bit about DAO, but at the time, DAOs had not yet evolved, to where it is now. So would you say DAO encompasses like the squad concept?
Yeah, great question. DAOs are definitely like having a renaissance right now. It was a different kind of phenomenon at that point. It was more like theoretical. Like the Gnosis safe existed. Aragon wasn't really getting traction. There's some, I mean, DAO Stack was really not getting traction. So there's like some tools, but like nothing was really hitting except Gnosis safe at that time. So yeah, a lot has happened. I mean, from that essay specifically, it had a much bigger impact than any of us like really imagined. There's like a whole like startup Web3 vertical called Squads, like that came out of that. And I mean, literally the largest DAO platform on Solana is called Squads. They just, loved the essay and then went for it. So, and I think the one thing that the essay did was shift the narrative around DAOs, like to be a little bit more localized and within this kind of like group, it's more the multi-sig like level, and just highlighted the kind of power and importance of that like scale. We could have a conversation for hours about what is a DAO. We like intentionally didn't wade into that territory in the essay because it's like a little bit of a murky thing. But once you get to a certain scale, obviously like you've gone from multi-sig to a very kind of complex multi-stakeholder system that has very different concerns and maybe manages resources or tries to have different assurances around how it behaves. That's not really addressed in this piece. It's more just like you and your friends, if you're goofing off in the in Telegram, what if you were able to lend each other a hand, get them through dinner or something?
I love the part where it talks about squads have existed for thousands of years, and then it sort of explains or talks about how you're like, I think in the modern day or 21st century, you're more like an individual, but then the kind of squad aspect comes in as you as an individual, something about as an individual sort of connects with others, then there's a lot of like co-creating and collaborating, and I think that's very powerful. Like my mom is from Ghana, and community is such, you know, they say it takes a village to raise a child, and that is like really, you experience it, it's still happening, and everybody's involved in your life to help, but then also sometimes it can be overwhelming because you know, you don't want people knowing your business. So I think it's a great concept. And at the footer of it, I love how there's a shout out to Guild Squad, to Park House Squad, to Onion Street Squad, and the list goes on. And it certainly made an impact because I came across it on Gabby's Web3 reading list. And that's sort of where I've been getting a lot of insights about the space. So yeah.
It's really nice to see it on introductory, like reading lists for particularly for people who are like not super blockchain technical, but like maybe more interested in culture or like community, and there just needs to be more resources for that are inviting in that way. So that, I mean, it's really heartwarming to hear, and I'm glad that I'm doing my part to help people on board.
Yes, totally. And especially, like you said, you have passion for artists, and most artists don't want to deal with a lot of techie stuff, you know, they just want to create. And so and when we talk about NFTs and Web3, the first thing you think about is creators, right? And there are a lot of artists. And then when you think about crypto, most of the time people think more about the finance and stuff like that. So we need to make it easier. And we also want it to be inclusive. So that means that people from the emerging markets. So how do we break it down? And I think that's why NEWFORUM is here. We're also doing our part, you know, and so everybody's doing their part. And thank you so much for doing your part of your part, a NEWFORUM. And I'm wondering, where can our listeners and community, but before I say that, like if you have any recommendations or like last words to creators listening to you, or just anyone listening to you, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So I'm part of a very small NFT gallery called Folia. So I would recommend people check that out. It's a boutique. I don't know if we do it with our friends and the people that we, you know, artists that we respect. There's a really amazing community that's starting to form around the JPEG platform. I've been like hanging out there a bunch. So definitely recommend that. Yeah, I think those are great places to start. You can find me there every now and then.
Nice. And we had Maria Paula on NEWFORUM. She's a powerhouse.
She's incredible. Yeah.
She is. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'm glad we can find you in those places. How about your social platform?
Yeah. I'm on Twitter at HXRTS, and I tweet there frequently. So give me a follow.
Yes, he surely does. I've been reading them. And I tried to find him on LinkedIn and he wasn't there. So don't even. So yeah, thank you so much again, Sam. This was great. Very insightful conversation. Thank you for all your work. And thanks for touching on a bit about mental health. You know, I think it's very important. And thank you all for participating in today's forum. If you want to get more involved in our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. Twitter is NEWFORUM_NCO, and we will have all the links, including Sam's links, in the description below. And I promise to put the essay that we've been chatting about, Squad Wealth, as well. We'll link it all down. And so thank you again, and I will see you in the next episode.